Hey, welcome to my vlog and review of the first round of the MotoGP 2017 season. Qatar, the dust up in the desert, the matchup in the Middle East. If you were anything like me, waiting anxiously throughout the testing season to see what kind of bountiful entertainment the MotoGP 2017 season was going to bring our way, I'm sure like me you weren't disappointed. It was a pretty exciting first race. A pretty crazy and hectic first race, too, if you were watching all the free practices. You would think being out in the middle of the desert that rain wouldn't really be an issue, but rain was an issue. So they had to cancel free practice 4 and the qualifying sessions. They also had to start the race at 45 minutes to an hour late. It also meant that the grid positions were based on free practice 1, 2, and 3. Kind of hurt a few people, particularly Rossi, who had to start in 10th place. But it was the safest thing they had to do. They had no choice. It was a pretty stormy event that blew through on the Saturday evening. So I love this venue. I think this is the best way to start the season, particularly because I love the night race. I love the lights, the way they make the bikes kind of glisten and sparkle under the lights, the big stadium lights as they go around the track. I think it's a great way for the manufacturers to show off their new skin jobs, their new paint jobs on all the bikes, and it really makes them look terrific. The other little benefit is that when the bikes do go down, not that you want the guys to get hurt, but inevitably they crash, and when they do crash in these night races, you get to see all the sparks, and it really, the sparks fly everywhere. You really get a good shot of them and get to see them. I think it adds, a little element of excitement to it all. So I really love these night races. I think it's a great way to start the season off. And like I said, if you were like me, anxiously waiting, you probably weren't disappointed because it was a pretty exciting race. And it was also the first time, if you were watching through testing season, you were trying to figure out, like I was, trying to figure out who was going to have the edge. There were a few, obviously, Vinales in particular, who definitely seemed to dominate the testing season pretty intensely. But there were also a few nice little surprises to see at the end of this race, which we're also going to take a look at. But let's take a quick look at the paddock for the 2017 MotoGP season. Here they are. What a motley looking crew, all suited up and ready for battle. And of course, their better halves, fine young ladies. What a good looking paddock we have this year. And hopefully going to be an entertaining one as well. So let's start out. Let's take a quick look. And where do we start? First place, Vinales. If you haven't been following along for the testing season, well, first of all, shame on you. But second of all, Vinales has pretty much been the talk of the town throughout the entire test season. I think he dominated every test session overall. He also dominated Rossi at a private Yamaha test. He's pretty much really, he's raised the bar for himself. Expectations on Vinales were high going into this race. I think he really took to that Yamaha like peanut butter on toast. He really just got right on it and went with it. So, yeah, he had a great test season. He topped the free practice on the first day for this race. And then didn't kind of slow down for the rest of the free practice. It was a weird free practice. The track conditions weren't great. So yeah, he started the race in first, and rough start. I've noticed that Vinales, even when he was back on the Suzuki, a little bit of a rough starter. Might be a chink in the armor for him that his starts aren't the best. Although I'm sure with some time in practice, he's going to get better. But he had a little bit of a rough start. Kept his cool, kept his head about him. Didn't sweat it. He let the bike come back to him, let the feeling come back, had some patience, and of course came back and ended up in first place by the end of the race. Had a great battle with Dovi, great little tussle with Dovi. There was a question I questioned in my last review of the testing session. I questioned whether Vinales would have what it took when he got up there and started tossing around with them. It's only one race, but it looked pretty good. He and Dovi kind of went at it for the last, 6 to 8 laps, and really some great passes. Dovi, I blitzed by him a couple times on the straight. And another thing about Vinales is he's a great passer. He pulls off some of the smoothest, cleanest passes I think I've ever seen. It's like butter. Like I don't know how he does it. there's a lot of great passers. A lot of riders have their sort of different way, but he just kind of, I don't know, he makes it look so smooth and easy and effortless. Another sign that he's going to be a great, obviously, I assume, champion sooner than later. But yeah, he looked great. He had that rough start, kept his head about him. Like I said, expectations were high. Everybody was watching him. So the pressure was on. He seemed to perform pretty good. And like I've said all along, I like Vinales, and it seems like maybe there's a new sheriff in town. So where do we go next? Dovi, P2, had the great battle with Vinales in the last 6 to 8 laps. Unfortunately for Dovi, again, I think this is the third year in a row that he's come in second. I think he was beat this year by Vinales, and then last year by Lorenzo, and the year before by Rossi, ending up in second place. Something about always the bridesmaid, never the bride. But I don't know. He looked great. He looked consistent. Usually Dovi's a consistent guy. So he looked good. They had a last minute tire change, I think, on the grid. The hour delay for the race, put them into a cooler sort of part of the evening. So I think he backed off or he changed it at the last minute to a soft tire, which obviously he managed well and did well with. But he said at the end of the race that he really had nothing left. So it was pretty impressive that he went at Vinales the way he did, considering he was really trying to nurse that tire home. P3, Rossi, Yamaha. Rossi has not looked good. If you're a Rossi fan and you've been watching Rossi through the testing season, Rossi has not looked good. He's not been happy. Took a wrong turn in Phillip Island on the testing in Phillip Island on day 2. And I think it seems to be all about front end feel. I don't think Rossi, Michelin came out with a newer tire, a new design, obviously, for this year. Slight camber change on the tire, as well as a slight sort of density hardness change. They're a little bit softer, and a slight camber change on the shape of the tire. And Rossi seems to be having some trouble. I don't think he's been liking getting his front end feel. He likes to brake hard, and it's not been working out for him. So he hasn't looked great over the pretty much the entire test season. The entire test season, he hasn't really looked great. And then with the bad weather, he ended up in 10th place on the grid, so 4th row. Because of there was no qualifying, so he was really kind of down there. Nonetheless, when he came back, 3rd place, podium finish. You could tell, I think it was a win for Rossi. He said afterwards that once he got into the top 5, he felt like, okay, I'm good. And so getting up to 3, getting on the podium for the start was great. And hopefully that's going to continue. Hopefully he's found the fixes to all his little woes for that front end. But only time will tell. We'll have to wait till Argentina to see. Honorable mention, I think, to Johan Zarco, Tech 3 Yamaha. He led the first 5 laps of this race, like right out of the gate. The first quarter of the race, 5 of 20 laps. And I mean, he kind of led like a champ. I don't know. He seemed like he was really dominant. It seemed like you can kind of tell when some guys get up there that they're not so sure. He seemed really confident. I don't know. And then he crashed on the 5th, 6th lap. 6th lap, he crashed. What Zarco said after the race is that he decided to relax a little bit, or that he essentially saw that he was getting so far ahead of Marqez, and he started to question, I think, his tire a little bit. Like, am I pushing this soft tire too much? He doesn't have much of a, this is his first race in MotoGP, first race on a MotoGP bike. So he really has no sort of ground to understand it by. So he said he kind of saw himself getting like one. I think by the time he crashed, he was over a second ahead of Marqez and everybody else, obviously. So I think he said he kind of wanted to slow down a little bit, and he decided to back off a little bit, thinking that he was really beating on that soft tire, which he probably was. And that was it. A little rookie mistake, but a great sign if you're Tech 3. And as well as Tech 3's other rookie, Jonas Folger, the German, another guy who lit up the testing season. He really got a lot of attention for himself, and he wasn't necessarily the best pick. I don't think some people questioned whether he was a good pick for Tech 3. But I love it. I love seeing, people take a gamble on somebody, and I love seeing that guy pay it off because Folger looked great throughout the testing. He looked great in the free practice. He had a really rough start. When you ask him, he said he was a little too timid on the first lap, and he really got eaten up. He dropped from 8th down to 18th, and then throughout the race climbed himself back up to 10th, which I think, considering first race in the MotoGP on an off-factory bike, 10th place, I think is pretty commendable. So I don't know wherever Hervé Poncherel is, but he's probably grinning like a Cheshire cat right now because, he really seems to so far have hit the jackpot for Tech 3. And also it's good, I think, for German fans who were sad to see Bradl go over to World Superbike. Another German in there, plus a Frenchman, Zarco. So we're really mixing it up. Hopefully they're going to get up into the top 6 once in a while. And I have a feeling that, one or both of them might, throw a few wrenches in the works for some of those top guys who are really competing for the championship. Either way, it does look like Tech 3 has got themselves a pretty talented lineup for the season, which vouches good for them and certainly good for the competition for the rest of us. So where do we go next? Marquez, 4th place, 6.7 seconds back on Vinales. He made a bad tire choice. He says at the very last minute he changed his tire. I think he went softer, and it was a problem for him. The time of day, because it's a night race, they only have a limited window, and so as the time, I think it was 45 minutes to an hour later. So that means everything's that much cooler, and it changes things for everybody. Either way, he says he made a bad choice. Nonetheless, outside of that, Honda's still struggling with grip on acceleration. They've changed their firing order this year from the Screamer to the Big Bang. They're really trying to tame that big Honda engine. The power delivery is just intense. One of those kind of all speed, no control. Well, they've got a lot of power, but they aren't controlling it the best. So they're not getting the acceleration of the corner. So they're having to brake harder and make up that distance. Which is probably why Crutchlow ended up crashing, I think, on lap 3. Not to laugh, he's one of my favorite guys. But pushing hard. He had to push hard. The track conditions weren't the best, and he kind of bit it. I think he was the first one to go down on the 3rd lap. P5 Pedrosa, it warms my heart, truly does, to see Pedrosa, back up there. He's a guy, Rossi doesn't seem to like the new Michelin. But Pedrosa, on the other hand, really seems to like the new Michelin. He seems to, he says it warms up a little bit faster. It's a little bit softer, and the contour has helped him. So for whatever reason, he seems to like the new tire. And even though there was a bunch of crashes, he's still in 5th place, only a little bit behind Marquez. So, as I always say, I would love to see Pedrosa win, and you never know, maybe this is his year. He still had some problems with the front, but the good news, like I said, is Michelin seems to have brought a tire this year that's not going to hamper him so much like it did last year. I think he really was the one who paid the price last year with the Michelin tire. Really didn't help him out. So hopefully that's going to be good. Hopefully we're going to see more Pedrosa up near the top. Like I said, I'd love to see him win. I don't know if it's going to happen, but fingers crossed. Next, we're on to 6th place. And AEspagaro on the Aprilia. Aleix was a little bit heartbroken last year when Suzuki decided to break up with him. He felt that he deserved to stay and he wanted to stay. That being said, what a great way to start his 2017 campaign with Aprilia by giving Aprilia their first top 6 finish. Great for Aprilia, great for Aleix. He seems to like the bike. He said afterwards that it's a Sunday bike, and that he's really got to work on his qualifying to, get himself up there in position. But another guy, hopefully on that Aprilia, that's going to get up there in that top 6 battle, maybe even top 3 every once in a while, and really make it more entertaining for everybody else, as well as throwing in a little monkey wrench into the works for some of the other top guys. Where are we going to look at next? Lorenzo, unfortunately down in 11th place, not even in the top 10. He had a weird testing season if you watched it. He was up and then he was down, and he kind of seemed to get it and then he didn't. And I think he's just really struggling to adapt himself to that bike. He's still, he rides the way he wants to ride, and it's having a little bit of trouble. That being said, Lorenzo's a super talented guy, and I'm sure with a little bit of time in the race, he's going to find his rhythm. The fact that Dovizioso was in second place and he was down there in 11, he was 20 seconds behind by the end of the race. I don't know how it's going to work out, but I hope he does well. I hope he gets the hang of it, because he's certainly a great competitor, and you'd love to see him back up there at the top. And on to Iannone, who didn't finish DNF. He crashed on lap 10, but he looked great up until then, I thought. I still think he's going to have a great year. I still think once he gets the hang of that Suzuki that he's going to ride that thing like he's ringing a bell. If you look at the crash, he kind of went in hot. I think he says he touched Marquez's back tire. You can kind of see he slinked up and sort of seemed to try to sort of change the direction. So he kind of at the last second and, exceeded traction. He says he bumped Marquez's tire. Either way he went down, it was a bit of a weird crash. Again, a little bit hot maybe on his part going into the corner. Maybe Marquez slowed up a little bit more than he normally did in that corner. It's hard to tell. But I stand by it. I think Iannone is going to have a great season on that Suzuki. Honestly, he looked great up until that point. I still think he's got to get a couple races under his belt. And like I said, he's going to be ringing that thing like a bell. And finally, KTM. I loved seeing KTM come back. And I love their new wrap on their bike. The two tones of red and the yellow. It looks great. It's probably the best looking bike for me on the field. Maybe the Suzuki. But as far as the colors go on the bikes, I love the KTM. It's a beautiful bike. Unfortunately, they both finished outside of the points. They were down, I think AEspagaro said, on average 1.5 seconds a lap. Maybe a little bit more than they thought, but certainly not bad. Like I said before, if you know KTM, they're like the Karate Kid. It's karate yes or karate no, no karate maybe. So if they're in it to win it. I have no doubt they're going to be up into the points very soon. And I can't wait to see once that bike really gets moving, because I think it's going to be pretty quick. So that wraps up our review of the first round of the 2017 MotoGP season. Honestly, I spent pretty much the entire testing season, trying to sort of figure out who was going to have issues, who was going to be strong, who wasn't, sort of trying to, figure out how it was all going to shape out. And I kind of thought going into the first race that it was going to answer a lot of those questions for me. And to be honest, it ended up giving me more questions than answers. Is Vinales going to be able to keep up this pace on the Yamaha? Is Rossi going to figure out these front end issues? Is Marquez and Honda, are they going to be able to solve the power delivery issues they have? Is Pedrosa going to have a better year on these new Michelins? How's Lorenzo going to do? Is he going to find his way on the Ducati? Is Iannone going to have the stellar year that I think he's going to on the Suzuki? How are these Tech 3 guys going to shape up, and how are they going to affect the championship and the competition? The only thing I can say is that it looks great. It looks so exciting. I can't wait to find out the answers to all these questions. With that, don't forget the next round, April 9th, less than 2 weeks away. They're down in Argentina. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment, hit the like button, subscribe, and let's look forward to more MotoGP 2017.